Hello, I'm Joe Dillette, and we're going to have a beginner project. It's a beginner project because it concentrates on the disciplines. The discipline that we're going to be working on is the roundness. So we're going to be doing a relief carving of a dog's head. Let's first talk about the different styles of carving. You have carving in the round, which is like a statue. It goes all the way around. A relief carving, like this, where you're relieving the surface, almost anything can be done in a relief. So when you have a relief carving like this is called a pierced relief because it goes right through. In this beginner project, we're using the Schaaf Tools beginner set. In the beginner set, there are 7 tools. The whole project is going to be done with these tools. So when you start to carve, one of the first questions is what type of wood do you use? And for beginning, I would say you use a soft wood. So pine is soft, but you don't want to use Douglas fir. That's in the pine family, but the wood has got long fibers. It has some very hard and very soft streaks. And oak is another one. Oak carves good, where Douglas fir does not. But oak is not a good one to start with either, because you want the soft wood. It's a little easier to push your tools through, but more importantly, the softer the wood, the sharper the tool has to be. And one of the things you really need to learn at the beginning of carving is to sharpen your tools. So you need to be able to recognize when your tool starts getting dull, it'll start tearing the wood. A very popular carving wood is basswood. Aspen is another nice soft wood. Mahogany is a little harder, but it's not that hard. So mahogany is a good one also. White woods like poplar is also another. Basswood is what many carvers use. So if you're going to do a relief carving and carving in the surface, it makes a difference what side you carve from. So if you have a piece of wood, you look at the end grain here. So this particular one here, I'm looking at the end grain, and I see the grain going like this. A woodworker knows that this side here is the pretty side of the wood that goes to the outside. The heart of the tree was here, the outside of the tree is here. And the carver carves from the heart side. The reason why you carve from the heart side is you get less warping in the wood. So as you're carving the wood, you're relieving the stress in the wood. This piece here has like this. This is the heart side. The heart of this one was way over here because that's the center of these radiuses. But this wouldn't make a whole lot of difference because this is the side I would carve from. But it probably would not warp coming from this side because it's almost quarter sawn. So in the log, if the piece in your grain is going this way, if the piece comes out of here, it's quarter sawn. If the piece comes out of the piece of wood here, that's plain sawn. We're going to be using exclusively the beginner set of Schaaf tools. The next thing we're going to need is a pattern. To create the pattern, what I suggest you do is either use my pattern. I'll put it up on the screen and you can take a picture of it, do a screen copy, print it out, any size you want. I'm working on a size here that is about 5 3/4 by about 7 inches. But you can make any size you want by blowing it up. I recommend you take a picture of your dog, probably the side view to where the nose is sticking out like this. So we're going to be practicing that roundness. So I've got a picture of a dog here that I am going to use, and what I've done is I printed it out to the size that I want, and I laid it onto the wood because what I want is to get this focal point of the nose and the eyes looking at a ball. So I added a ball in here. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to transfer the pattern. Craft stores sell the carbon paper. This is the true carbon paper, the carbon like in a lead pencil, not the grease type that you use for duplicating copies on a typewriter, because that will smear and stain the wood. But the true carbon paper is just like the lead in a pencil. And instead of doing that, I'm going to show you how you can make your own by just taking a pencil. Now I'm taking the front side of it, I'm turning it around, and I'm using the door as my light table. And where I'm going to be making the lines, I'm just taking the pencil on the side and I'm just smudging where the lines are going to be. I'm not being accurate about it at all. There is enough carbon on here now to do the transfer. So now I'm going to plan where I want it centered. So I'm feeling for the edge of the board. Instead of a pencil, I'm going to use a ballpoint pen. This diameter of this ball is about 1.25 inches, and you see it's not real round. I'm going to carve that round. I don't need to draw it round, that's just a rough shape. The nose of the dog extends off of my picture a little bit. I'm going to fill it in. The head also goes above the picture a little bit. I'm just going to fill that in, coming around like this. Okay, what I'm looking at is the focal point is going to be the dog, or the ball. The nose and the eyes, even though the eyes are closed, the eyes direct you towards that ball. So you see the transfer of the carbon here. I got enough of a picture that I can finish it up. I chose this for our beginning carving because of the round shapes, not because it's simple to do. Talk about layering. So when I look at a piece of wood, one of the rules of thumb is, besides coming in from the heart side to where the grain is wrapped this way, another rule is try not to go more than half the depth of the piece of wood. If you go more, then you're going to have more of a tendency to warp. And then I like to take the top side and divide it into 4 layers. The top layer that we're not taking any wood off, or very little, I call 0. That's 0 depth. The next layer is 1 depth. Then the next one down is 2. And the next one is 3. So when we're talking layers, and I say we're going to go take this down to layer 1, we're going to go that deep. When we're taking it down to layer 2, it's that deep. When we take it down to layer 3, it's halfway through the wood. So around the edge, we want this dog head to stand out. So we want the background to be about a 3 all the way around. 0 right here, and going down to maybe a 1 or a 2. This part of the nose here will be, that'll be a 0. That eyebrow is going to probably be close to a 0. You can kind of see where, and the toes are going to be like a 0 here at the toes, and then that'll be going back to a depth of 1. So the exercise is how to make that ball look round, how to make the head look round. Here you can do a freeze frame and do a screen print. Print it out to the size that you want to get the pattern. Or use your own picture from your own dog. For this project, we're going to be using the 6-piece set of Schaaf tools. It's what they call the beginner set, but the tools are top quality. They call it a beginner set because the selection is only 7 tools. So for this project, we're going to start off using the 11 10 millimeter and number 3 12 millimeter. The background has several choices. We talked about the layering going down to the deepest, about halfway down into the wood is a number 3 depth. What I'm going to do with this is the background, I'm going to fan it out like this here and come up. And so the deepest area is going to be right up next to the dog, and then it's going to rise, kind of scoop like a dish coming up. So you notice in the foreground, it isn't very deep. That shadowing takes place right around the head in the focal point. This is not part of the picture, but I want to use it for an exercise. If we want to raise the circle like we're going to do on this ball, then we keep the paintbrush in mind. We want a smooth cut up against the edge of the circle, and so when we're making the cut, we want to go in this direction because we're picturing the grain in the wood as being like the bristles of the brush. And if we're going this direction with the cut, then that's going to be the rough side. We're going to be splitting the wood. The wood's going to try to separate. So we want to cut in this direction here. So if we're coming up against this edge here, we want to come in this direction. And then for this side, coming up here, we want to go in that direction. Then we turn the paintbrush to this direction. And then on this side, we're coming up in this direction. The V-tool, you use both right-handed and left-handed. When we're coming across here, it doesn't make any difference if you go start on this side of the line. But the exercise to practice is take one wing of that V-tool and try just to get up right next to your pencil line. Now here I didn't go very deep, so I can come right across. When you're going perpendicular with the grain or with the grain, you can go any direction, here or here, here or here. It's only when you're coming on these angles. So now I'm switching hands. So this hand that's up close to the cutting edge is the control hand, and the other hand is the power hand. So I'm supplying the power with this hand. As I'm coming in the control hand, I'm controlling the angle. I am pushing back to control the amount of power, and I'm steering. So both hands are used in the steering. This is called right and left hand carving. So I still can see my pencil line coming around. I went right up next to the edge. We're going to be doing the same thing with the dog when we're coming down this direction here. And if you go away from the line a little bit, that's okay. But try not to take the line off because you're going to lose your drawing. So let's go back to the paintbrush. What we've done here is we've come up in this direction to make a smooth side here. So the smooth side of the cut is up next to the circle. Now we want to take the background down. That is going to be the opposite. So if we are looking at the grain coming this way, and if I'm going to be making this here cut coming down around here, making it smooth on the outside, then I need to go in this direction here. Because if I'm going to cut that grain coming up in this direction here, look at, I'm going to be splitting it out. So if I reverse that and I go in this direction here, coming down, from here I am going up in that direction, and from here I'm coming in this direction. What I do is I number 3 12mm chisel. Again, I'm coming around like this, and I'm trying not to go deeper than my stop cut. Here I did. And what happens when you do that is you end up with a lot of whiskers, a lot of cleanup that you have to do. So try not to go below your stop cut. So the cut that we made around here is called a stop cut. And what we're doing is we're keeping the wood from removing this wood here. So we're stopping the wood coming in here. So wood carving is a combination of making stop cuts and then removing the waste. So here we're removing the waste coming around. And again, I went below my stop cut here. So we try not to do that. And then we're coming up in this direction here. So we have the circle is raised now. If we want to go deeper, then we repeat the process. What we're going to use, Schaaf has got this size mallet with the neoprene on. Theirs is green. I've had this for 10 years or more. When you're carving with the mallet, you're going to swing always the same way. You can cross over your hand, swing like this. You can cross over, swing like. So the mallet is always, if you're right-handed, it's in your right hand. If you're left-handed, it's going to be in your left hand. So when we get to the top of the head here, when I came this direction, I come across, and that wing of the chisel again is right up to the line as I'm coming down. And you can see how the rough cut is happening here, because when we smooth that off, we have to come in this direction. Then coming around this way, so that's like the top of the ball here. And I got to watch my depth not to go too deep here, because I want this background to come out. So I'm going to do just a hint of a line here and then just start scooping it in. But we're going to use the mallet for this, because the mallet gives us more control. So one thing we have to be cautious about is the way this grain is going. If I continue in this cut that I'm making, right here, it's going to split out. Before I get over here to this side, it's going to split. So when I'm about here, and I know it's going to split, then I'm going to come back in this direction. Now, I'm going in the wrong direction on here, but that's okay. For that little bit, I know I'm going in the wrong direction. So what I'm doing is I'm watching that I'm not splitting into the head for that little bit of a distance. So there are times when you have to go in the wrong direction, and that's okay. Just be aware of it and be careful. Now, you can see how nice and smooth the cut is here against the head of the dog, and how rough it is out here. That's what we're trying to accomplish, keeping the head smooth. I could go pretty deep here, and you see I didn't go right up to the line here. I can trim that out. When I am down to my depth, about halfway into the wood, then I can come with this same V-tool, and I can just work out that little spot here. So I don't need to waste time as I'm coming down using the mallet and get into all the little crevices. Now I'm by the nose here, coming up, making this, so when we're coming up this side of the nose from the underside, and then we'll do the same for the ball. Cleaning out the background here. Traditional carving techniques is they say you should never bury a wing into the wood. but I like to bury a wing. The reason why they say don't bury the wing into the wood is because you're putting stress on it. But a wood carving tool is very strong in the forward direction. But if you try to use it like a screwdriver, trying to get in there and pry, then you're going to be breaking the tool because it doesn't have much strength for the twisting. But if you're pushing straight ahead and you bury the wing, you're still using the strength of the tool. The reason why I like to bury the wing is because I can push only half of that tool in, which takes only half the strength. Keeping this side out makes a nice clean cut, but I'm splitting the wood. I'm using the grain and seeing I'm making a larger cut than the width of the chisel by only using half of the chisel. So I'm using that and keeping it nice and smooth because this wing is out. Now I want to take out our little practice circle here. So I'm going to again come with this wing sticking out of the piece, and I'm just going to work it. You see how fast you can remove by burying one of the wings and pushing straight forward, no twisting action. We're going to do a stop cut around the paw, around the mouth here. That's going to be shallow. Back to the fishtail number 3 gouge and just kind of smooth that off. And this might be to depth right in here. We may have to go deeper, but probably not. So now we're just going to hog the wood down to the depth. Now I'm keeping in mind over here that this is going to be shallow. Also, I'm going in the wrong direction here because of the way this is. I'm wrapping around here, but if I was coming this way again, I would blow it out. So I'm down in about that far. Now I can come up. Also, when it's coming down like this, the brush, it's three-dimensional. So coming down on the brush like that as we're going into depth. So we're going about halfway into the wood to layer number 3 here, and I want this to be dynamic. This is the focal point. Make some good headway here and taking this background down. The background is getting down to where it's looking pretty good. We're going to talk about this number 11 10 millimeter. I think I called it a V-tool to start with, but it's a veiner. And the reason why I love this tool is because of the large radius in the bottom, and that makes for a nice soft cut. That's what we use to come around making the stop cuts here. And now, because of that larger radius, it makes a soft cut because of the curve. I want to create a hard shadow. So we're going to use the number 12 in this beginner set, which is also a 10 millimeter. It's got a sharper radius on the bottom, and with that, we'll take the mallet to get right up to the edge. So there's a couple things that this V-tool is going to do for us. We are away from the pencil line a little bit here. I kind of maybe smudged it off over here. But we need to get the side perpendicular. We need to get a nice sharp corner in the bottom because I want to create a hard shadow here. So to do that, we just come and skim that edge. Now if we're going up in this way, that would be the wrong direction. You see how that pulls the fibers. So we need to come down on it like this. And I'm holding this wing vertical, and I'm just taking skim cuts to get right up to that pencil line. And then using this sharp radius at the bottom to create that hard line. Now we didn't take the time to get into this little area here. Before we go in there too sharp, let's look at our pattern. Now look at the bigger picture here, and you see in the bigger picture there's a little bulge to the eyeball that comes out here. So I don't want to take the V-tool and come down and get rid of that. So I want a little bit of this angle. It's coming straight down, and then we can create that roundness. I think that's the little puff under the eye. It isn't the eyeball. It's that little puff under the eye, the bag under the eye. The same now with the ball. That nice hard shadow around that ball with the V-tool. You notice that ball isn't real round. We can make it round, and we will make it round by using that same number 3. Now, because the number 10 is too big to get in here, we can nibble up to the edges like this. And then this number 3 fishtail 12 millimeter, we can come in like this. Right now up here, I still have that soft shadow, what I made with the veiner, and I like that softness here. I'm trying to create this focal point. I'm going to go a little bit harder with the shadow by using the V-tool under here, just to get that to stick out a little bit more. I'm going to skim that background down just a little bit more. So starting the contour of this ball, again we keep in mind this paintbrush, and coming up on that paintbrush from this side here, and I'm using this number 3 gouge upside down, and so using that nice radius to start creating that roundness. Coming down this nose, all the cuts are going to be coming down. So let's look at the picture here now and see what we've got going on here. His eyes are sticking out a little bit. So coming right up that nose, there's a little deeper channel here. And let's go back to this number 11. You see how the softness of his face. And we don't want to use the V-tool because that's going to create too harsh of a shadow. So this veiner is perfect for this. So we're going to come right down the nose and creating that nice soft look coming right down here, starting to get that eyebrow to stick out a little bit. And you see this little thing here, we could take the pencil and draw that in here, because that's this line that comes right over in here. And let's make that happen. And under his eye, this hollow comes down around here, down below the eye. He's got a bag under his eye right here, and that's that bag on the other side. So we're going to start creating that bag under his eye. And some of this nice soft shadow coming here. Alright, so as we start looking at this face here, this here point here is going to be like 0. We had marked that as 0. We're not going to take anything off of that, but it's going to slope on back. So let's start sloping this and creating that roundness. So this is going to, a lot of this is going to go away, but I can see it's going to happen really nice. So we'll go back to this number 3 gouge. And the slope that we're trying to create on that head, that's going in that direction. So, and because of the brush, we're going deeper. I'm going in this way, where this would be the wrong direction. So we're losing a lot of what we put in, but that's okay. We kind of got a plan of what we're doing here. And round this nose off. But I want this nose to stick out pretty good. This is good. We had 0 marked right here, and I want that nose and this ball to be, that's the focal point. So bring them to the foreground, and this area here we're going to sink in a little bit now. So that veiner was our stop cut. And it doesn't take much. A few shallow cuts and you're starting to get that feeling of it going back. This bottom here, he's laying down and his mouth is puffed out a little bit. We can start creating a little bit of that, but let's keep some sticking out, but then it goes back in a little bit. And you see how hard a line from the corner here. So that's what we go back with this number 11, this veiner, and just come right across it like that. Now I take the number 3 and I'll go down to the bottom of that stop cut that I made with the number 11 there. Because what I'm trying to do is get this slope from this part of the nose coming down. And this is, there's a little hollow in here, so I don't want it to bulge this way. I want to concave it. Now don't go too deep here, because his mouth here and this along the top of his mouth puffs out a little bit. He's got a nice little crease here. So let's start doing that coming around here. This goes in under the ear. So if we draw that ear a little bit better, we have this top part that comes in like that. It's come down, and then this is our deepest area right in here. There's an underside, but probably goes more like that. And then this part here of the ear coming over like so. So this is going to be the deepest area where I have it marked there. Now this whole area under here is deep, so let's take that out of here. Let's go down, work on this whole area right under here, get rid of that. I'm going to use the veiner, and then I can sharpen it up with the V tool. So we've got the number 11, and I'm making the cut coming up between the paws. So I'm going to take the number 3, work out this area here. I want to make this a little deeper in here. He's got a real nice look and happening right here. To continue around the head, let's start going in the back. Now this is a fairly low area, but this ear sticks out over there. So we're going to come down on that ear. And now The height of this, I'm not going to keep that same height. I'm going to lose a little bit of that just so I can get that ear to stick out. I'm going to get a gradual climb as this thing is coming up out of that. You see how unimportant this is back here. It just got a little hint of the ear and that. So we're not going to make harsh lines. The important stuff is happening right here with that nose, around this paw, this ball. This is the important thing. So I am just going to create those shapes, but not put in some harsh lines. I want to draw the attention to the focal point. That is sticking out probably more than the picture, but I'm really liking that. That's giving a more relaxed. I like the curls, his wrinkles happening. The way Schaaf has designed these veiners with this side fanned out a little bit is very versatile. Look at what it's being able to do around here, getting that nice curve to that ear. So about visualizing round shapes. The beginner carver tends to leave too many flat areas. There is no flat area on this dog anyplace. So we try to remove stock off of everything except maybe just where these 0 points are. So even though you think, well, that area is almost flat, still take a little bit off and create that roundness. See, this area is still way too flat, and we're just going to, just a little bit of skimming with the tool is all that's needed. Now, above the eye, it's sunken in a little bit. You can see a little bit here. So I'm going to scoop it a little bit as I'm coming up. It does show that going back. I really like that. That looks so relaxed. Just gives it that little comical look. This number 3 chisel is very good for making cuts like this, separating the toes. So we look at here and we see this toe is sloped a little bit more. Now the pads underneath slope under more. So I'm using my number 3 gouge just upside down to do some of those cuts. This is an area right in here that's got a nice deep shadow. Just a little bit of cleanup. Now, drawing that dog's nose, hard to see it, but there is that's where the hole in the nose goes. It comes around. You can just barely see it here. And then it's on the other side too. We need to get rid of that hard line. There's a ridge that's right there. So we will soften that up. So to do the hole, we could take a smaller gouge in that, but I want to show you how the corner of this number 3 can come in here very nicely and cut that nostril in. Do a little bit of softening here across the top. I like to do most of my smoothing with the chisel. I normally don't use sandpaper, but in wood carving there is no rules. If you want to sand it smooth, you can, and then you can apply any finish that you want on it. Now I'm applying the finish, and I'm putting it on the back first. I like to use varnish, the Minwax Helmsman varnish, and what I like to do, well, it's an indoor-outdoor varnish, but it's an oil base, but I like to take a little artist oil and add it to the varnish, and that gives it a little bit of a stain. Now I cleaned up my whiskers a little bit on here before I varnished it. But one of the things that I do is I can go back. I normally do a little bit of carving while I'm varnishing because I'm looking at where the shadows are falling, and if I need to increase a shadow or fix a little blemish, I can do it right when the varnish is wet. So a couple things that I'm seeing here now is the nose doesn't really have a defining mark where the nose is. This is the number 3 fishtail that I'm using on it, just creating a little bit of a line. I want to increase the shadow in this area, so I'm going to take the V tool and put a stronger shadow by doing a little bit of undercutting here. The varnish on your tools will not hurt it a bit. This area right here, I'd like to smooth that a little bit more. Then I see I've got some scratches in the wood also. So I'm cleaning up those areas. One reason why I like to do dog pictures like this is dogs are real easy to please. There, I'm liking that a lot. Okay, it's done. Thank you.